After taking on some bathroom renovations that went tragically wrong, I decided to turn my hand back to renovating the Sarah Ann. After all, what could possibly go wrong?
Here we go again, back in the shed with Sarah Ann. With the Australian Wooden Boat Festival coming up in February, March, it's now October and I want to get an early start on it. There's much to do. I've just started rubbing back these rubbing strips, and you can see this is original. I didn't paint these last time. These are the washboards out of Serenity. I remember the first time I opened them up and just pulled these pieces out almost reverently. It was just a beautiful thing, a beautiful moment when I first looked inside her. And human pine, it gets a bit brittle as it gets old. You've got to be a little bit careful with it. Still retains a lot of its original oils, but it does get a bit brittle. So I did manage to chip a piece off the corner here when I was a little bit rough with it. I've sanded these to 80 grit, removed all the varnish, and so what I've got is some 120 grit and some 240 grit. Here, lose a little bit of depth in the little rebate around here that the port light goes into. So, two things. These are pretty tight and also they sit a bit proud. So I need to just increase the depth of the routed joint there, and I have to increase the diameter of it a little bit because I'm going to replace these port lights. And that's it, neat as a pin. See, I've allowed for making a slightly larger glass because as that was, it only had about 4 or 5 millimeters of cover there, and I want to increase that. A couple of years ago, I got hold of this nice little reconditioned veteran bandsaw. It's been thing always leads to another when it comes to doing up old wooden boats, or any old boats for that matter, even new boats for that matter. And in the process of doing up the cabin sides, and then decided to take the port lights out, and so there's the bronze surround for the port light. And then I found that the original port lights that are in there, the rebate was a bit minimal and can cause a problem in the future with not sealing. So I decided to remove the port lights, and I'm going to cut some new port lights slightly oversized. So I've run a rebate bit around the opening, And now I'm going to do slightly larger port lights, which have about an 8mm cover, which can seal underneath. And in order to do that job, I needed my bandsaw. So I've had the bandsaw in storage for a while. As you can see, it's just sort of tucked in the corner under the tarp here, so I can cover it up at night. But I've got 6 of these port lights to cut out of perspex, and this little bandsaw will do the job very nicely. Dive down into Sarah Ann and fit these new belts, and then I'll flush her out because she hasn't been flushed out since the last time that I used her, which wasn't that long ago. So I just flush all the salt out of it, and it may very well be the last time that I fire up the Volvo. I run the Volvo at modest level of revs, which was more than enough to push her along at 5.5 knots. But if you start to rev it out, you start to shake the boat, and your eyeballs kind of pop out of your head and drop down and land on the thwarts. So I was told by John Welshford that they're great motors, and they are very simple. She always fires pretty much first time. And but John said there's one thing you need to know, and that is that the cylinder stays still and the motor jumps up and down around it. So that has proven to be a fairly accurate description of the old single cylinder Volvo. So I was talking to my friend AJ about how I might get hold of, say, a 2-cylinder Yanmar, and honestly they're like rocking horse poo. They do come up from time to time, but they can be quite expensive, and you don't know what the history of them is. And he said that what most people do is they wait till they get a wrecked boat with a decent motor in it, and they acquire the wrecked boat and take the motor out, and then they've got the problem of disposing of the boat. Well, I waited patiently for about 6 days, and my brother rang me the other day on my birthday, and he said, oh, my old boat, which was a Gurney, I think he said it was, Gurney 27 hard chine plywood boat, which he'd sold, had been heading up to Wynyard out of the Mersey River, and she'd been run down by the Julie Burgess, which is a 6-ton old wooden boat, not something you want to be hit by in the middle of the night. Came about because of a whole combination of circumstances, poor visibility and things, so I don't think anyone was particularly at fault. But end result was that she was run down, and it's damaged the rigging to the extent that she's not worth repairing. So I said, what sort of motor has it got in it? Well, he said it had a little 2-cylinder Kubota in it, so I started to look into it, and whilst a bit overpowered, perfect little motor, half the weight of the Volvo, and only 10 years old, and only 150 hours. And my brother Robert is a meticulous owner, and I know that she's been well cared for. So I purchased the boat, and I'm going to head up to Devonport, and we're going to motor around out of the Mersey River towards the east and into the Tamar River. If we have a nice little downwind, he said, a few dynamo repairs and we could still sail her. And we're going to sail her into Clarence Point and see what we can do with it. Strip all the bits off and take the engine out and install it in Sarah Ann in time for the Wooden Boat Festival.
And that will be the subject of the next video. For now, let's just take a look at Bass Strait in all its...
Home of absolutely zero badgers. Whatever were they thinking? But there are a lot of wombats here.
So anyone would think there'd been a bit of a tornado through here. Wasn't far from here that my great-great-father perished on board the bark Edward as he was sailing back from the northwest, having inspected his timber holdings up there. They found the ship's dock running up and down the beach.
My dear nephew Edward. My father was a shareholder in a large English land company. secured a large grant of land of many thousands of acres with a coastline of 50 miles. The company formed a township, Circular Head. At the end of May in 1843, he chartered a vessel of about 100 tonnes to convey himself as surveyor and architect, stores, etc., to the scene of what was to be our future home. No tidings ever came to light, nor a vestige of. The conclusion arrived at was that the vessel was crank, had no ballast, went over an unseasonal gale that was known to be blowing at the time.
I'm thinking about how this of life have that ability to work on you deep inside out, if you're allowed to. It's not easy.
Depending on how things work out, I may well be sailing through these waters with my brother in the coming weeks. Because I've bought a new boat. You should have seen my wife's expression when I told her.
Big call. Countdown to the Australian Wooden Boat Festival is on, and I'm going to be very busy for the next 100 days. Time to get on with it. This could very well be the last time I start up the Volvo. Victor the Volvo. Its purpose, and it's given me a good season. I've loved it and I've hated it. Well, over halfway around the cabin sides now. I've been taking it right back to bare wood, as you can see. And this was quite a big job across the back of the cabin there. I've still got the rails on top of the cabin to do and finish off the inside on that side. And then get a first coat all the way around. And I'll cut it back, and I'm not sure how many cuts I'll put on there. But I will lower it up quite a bit. I was wondering what the gold standard was for finishing timber with clear polyurethane, and a friend sent me a link to a site where they put 70 coats on. Yes, that's right, not 70 coats. Oh, yeah. No. Maybe something in between. My goodness. After deliberating over this for some time, I've decided the only way to do this is strip it right back to bare wood again and start again. So last time I used 2-pack polyurethane clear, and it's proven to be a bit brittle. So I'm going to go back to an oil-based finish. I use butyl mastic under here to seal these, and over time, especially in the hotter climate, it just gradually squeezes out, and you've got to slowly tighten these screws. So the issue is, can the steam penetrate? Well, I would say we've got about a 90% improvement there. Now I've been through all the grits, I'm going to wipe this over with a bit of methylated spirits or alcohol. And what I'm looking for is any residual scratches from earlier grits. It's a bit rough there, for example, but they'll show as black lines. So say you started with 80 grit, 40 grit say, which I think most of this I started with 40 grit, and then worked up through 80, 120, 240, even got a bit silly and went to 320. And if any of those earlier scratches, you see that's that little rough spot. I don't know if you can see that line there or not, but there's a small one there, which I'll take out prior to varnishing. So there you can clearly see with the metho as it's drying out some scratches from an earlier grit. Not sure what that was, but I did start with 80. The rest of it's perfect. Little mark there. I'll give that another go.
The Australian Woodenboat Festival is on the 7th of February. The countdown is on. That's around about 90 days left to go. Will I make it? And is it wise to take on that extra project of swapping out the engine and wrecking an old boat in the process? Put your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and as always, don't forget to subscribe and like.
You'd be tempted to think that it's all finished, but there's always more. So I've got to do the non-slip. I'm thinking I won't go overboard with it. No pun intended. Not too much non-slip. Just put it in the critical places, because there's lots of things like tow rails and stuff that stop you from slipping.